agencies and large companies that we could definitely assist on. So it's been a fun, I think my 90 days was like last week, so that was cool. I didn't get fired yet. The presentation itself, the title that I was assigned to me was how to create, curate, and convert great content. I typically speak on the darker side of SEO type of things. So I'm more known for talking about negative SEO, hacking within the payday space, how to go about identifying open footprints, that kind of stuff. So this is a little bit new to me talking about white hat type things. But unlike Dave, I actually want you to interrupt me. He said I could call myself the anti-Snyder. So if you have questions while I'm going up and I'm in a subject, jump in. I like being interactive anyhow. So that is that. Let's see here. I did get started in the search industry in 1997. It is not continuous since 1997 though. What happened was I was in college at the time. I was putting myself through to get some information systems degrees, operations, like the boring business tech type stuff. While I was there, I had a side job working for a natural doctor. And the doctor liked to sell his medications online. He's like, well, I want to figure out how to do this better. So I built him a store because I was a fake programmer at that point in time. Built him a website because I was a fake designer. And then like, well, how are we going to get traffic to this? After a period of time, figured out how to spam all to this stuff pretty quickly. And I did that for a little while. It was awesome. After that period of time, got the degree, became a tax programmer for a while, realized that it's the driest thing in the world that you can possibly do. Went back to SEO. So I've been doing SEO more or less since 2001 nonstop. Most recently, I was running an agency for the last 11 years, and then joined up with Dave and the crew here. The question posed is, well, what do I really know about content? I was my own client for those 11 years, so I built out thousands of websites. Many of them were very large, many of them were very small. We're talking like millions of pages indexed, and so I played with a lot of concepts over time in terms of creating automated content and then hiring high-end specific people. Like one of my domains is automobile.com. So I would go and I would poach writers, automobile writers, to write specifically for that domain. So I've played both sides of the coin, and I do recognize, coming from a heavy link background, that you could create all the content you want, but if you don't do anything with it, it means absolutely nothing. So what do I consider great content? It's all over the map. It comes in all shapes and sizes, right? So a content can be anything from the words in your book. It could be product copy, blog posts, design, like imagery, videos, anything that's interactive. Anything that you're putting in front of your user that you want them to do a specific action and they actually follow through with what you intended, that's what makes it great. It has to serve that specific purpose. So I want to try to not talk to you too much. I just want to try to walk through various examples and discuss a little bit why we did what we did. So the first one up here is Macy's. This is a sample of product copy. That's like the most boring thing that you could possibly write about if you're doing a whole bunch of it, right? It's like, oh, product copy. It's like, okay, you take 10,000 SKUs and you just go through it. The problem is, most of the major retailers use the same feed as everyone else. So how are they going to differentiate themselves? In most cases, they don't. In most cases, they get lazy and they just put it up and hope that the domain authority that they have is enough to carry them through. So with Macy's, all we're doing is we're taking the SKUs that they allow us to write for, and we're making it more unique. We're making it flow better with the brand voice. There's a little schema work involved. We're trying to make it just a step above what the standard is that the rest of the industry uses. Because really, I have Amazon bolded there. They're the only ones currently that are going to win in a war of using the same feed. I'd say that the caveat of that is, product search in Google is going to overtake that in probably the next 12 to 18 months. Look for that. But for now, now the king is Amazon, And the only way to get around it is to have content that's slightly different and slightly better. Blog posts. So everyone knows what a blog post is, but the unfortunate truth is a lot of the blog posts out there are crap. You know, there's people that were using Fiverr, they're using Text Broker, maybe they're grabbing an image on Creative Commons, they threw something up, and like, why are we not getting traffic? You know, I got 5 visitors last week. Well, what was the whole point of the content? What were you trying to do? This specific piece ended up being considered expert content. The reason was this client came to us, and Stefan can correct me if I'm wrong, but they needed a very specific emotional appeal to Hawaii towards the visitor. And so we had it crafted multiple times with the reviews that we did back and forth to create this long format piece that was not automated. It wasn't some overseas obvious junk. It was very specific, very detailed, and it really punched the user in the face when they read it. That was the point of it. Infographics. So this is actually a B&B, which is why I picked it out. We know what an infographic is. There's a lot of them out there. The great infographics have to be digestible. You have to be able to look at it, understand what's going on, and be able to digest it. So you're taking the data that was, you know, normally not easy to understand. It's viewable, digestible. It has to be, you know, somewhat educational and definitely entertaining if you want any sort of virality associated with it. This particular example, if I hot linked it, which I did not, came from a company called Worsit, which is a B2B IT company. They do stuff like business. What now? Yeah, like the cron jobs, like financial data, and it's dry, right? But they needed something that allowed their potential customers to understand the difference of why should they use Worsit versus someone else. Why should they even need this particular product versus doing something in Excel or writing a script in Perl and trying to handle it on their own. So this type of content ended up living on their blog, I believe. And it was designed specifically to satisfy the need of being educational for their consumer. Video, right? So I picked this particular video precisely because it's actually an affiliate. So bestlifequote.com, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a big brand, right? But they're able to differentiate themselves by having superior branding and content than, like, I have some life insurance sites. They're not as good. So let me pull up here just to show you, like, the depths of capabilities that good video can go through to explain the difference between a regular life insurance aggregator and something different. And look, you got a little picture of Dave Snyder there. Of course, you can't even hear it. Well, you can, but they might. So the problem in this particular industry, and like they're covering what the big problem is, and it is actually a big problem. If you were to go to like one of my sites and fill out a lead form, I don't actually have the legal authority to show you how the price quotes vary from carrier to carrier. You should be able to, but there are certain rules, like the FTC doesn't have authority over the insurance agencies. That's a side note. But these guys have a very different model. So they're pointing out the pain points. They're pointing out, hey, you know what? When you entered in the information to Joe's site, you got 20 phone calls and 17 emails, and it's getting farmed out to India for these call centers, and I don't like it at all. And they're basically saying, here's how we do it. We're different. You're not going to be matched up with 100 people. You're going to get like one local dude that calls you up and probably spams you after that. But it's a very interactive video that tries to cover the pain point. It's trying to cover all those emotional points that Dave talked about earlier in terms of, you know, what is the action based on this emotional trigger. Well, you hope that they don't sell it. I don't know that I always trust, you know, what I see in an advertisement. As we're marketers, we should be immune to marketing, right? Interactive is unbelievable right now. So I like interactive for a lot of different reasons. I don't think I put it in this particular slide. edited some of it. When you're putting up something in HTML5, the difference between putting up really great content in written copy versus something like HTML5 is, what if a scraper comes by? It's not impossible, but it's really difficult to go and scrape this interactive piece and throw it up on my site when you did the hard work and you have the copyrights and all that stuff. If it's a written text, it's really easy. If it's an image, you can hot link, or you could rip down the image and repost it, even like a static infographic. You can't do that with interactive. Additional points are, publications, like Time Magazine, Washington Post. We did a case study that I'll talk about later with Airbnb. But one of the things that happened that I found really interesting was they would talk about the company in one breath. But when they wanted to actually reference this piece, they couldn't just show the image and show exactly what they did. They had to link into it. So the SEO benefit of being able to give them that's very linkable is very high. Additionally, when you have something that's really cool like this, you're going to get a little bit of virality to it naturally. You have to do extra work on top of it, but it is something that's easy to share. I hope that this works. We are just working on it this week. This is an MBA draft that we are doing for CBS. So the concept is that you can go ahead and pick where a certain player is going to be selected. Like, uh-oh. So there's the key. I'm going to sign into Dave's. So he's going to say which player is going to be the fourth. Let's see here. Who I think it's going to be. Aaron Gordon. I went to the University of Arizona. So Derek, that's who I think is going to be selected. And so the cool thing about this and concepts like this is you can entice an entire community. If you have something that's really specific, you can get your entire community revolving around the content that they really care about, get them to use it, get them to post it on Facebook, but even better than that, they could show how did they actually perform based on their friends. People love rubbing it in other people's faces when they do better than someone else. So a lot like that Zimbio stuff and Upward that no one really likes, the whole point of it is well, where did I fit in? How did I fit in versus someone else? Why was I Princess Leia for Star Wars when he got to be Boba Fett? Because that's just not fair. That's the kind of thing that happens. And this, you can go down all sorts of rabbit holes with HTML5. It's probably one of the coolest things that ever happened to the web. Yeah, you can skip that little panda thing for now. I'll skip into the curating of great content. We all sort of know what curating means. There are certain communities out there that are essentially designed to consume and to crap out content and repeatedly. We talked about Dig. Dig was a little more general. I like a lot of the niche communities. So one of my favorite is FARC. FARC is a community designed for people that are they like to laugh and they like to be sarcastic and point at other people's follies. So call it a negative trait of my own, but I fit in with this particular group. If you have anything that's funny or intentionally or not, it fits in well with this. And there's a point in time when people talked about the Dig effect. The FARC effect was actually bigger. If you had something that really was funny, they could just crash your server with the traffic that they had. And no industry is devoid of humor. You could make something funny out of, I think Adecco signed up, but they didn't actually show us. So that's going to point out humorous HR policies, HR gone wrong, people getting fired for doing stupid things on a job. There's no shortage of things that you can cover. TripAdvisor, we talked about travel earlier. I went to Kauai with my wife a couple years ago, and we only used one site, and we really even only used one section of a site for our entire trip. You know what, we're going to go there, let's just figure this out. We found an airline, we found out, based on curating the experiences that other people had, which hotel to stay at, what activities we should do, what dining we should do. Smart companies, they're trying to take not just what they're known for, but everything that's ancillary around it and wrap it into this one big package. If these guys were smart, they would be partnering up with someone like Valpak to figure out what coupons work specific to your trip. I did a horseback riding on the beach. I had never been there. I don't have any relationships with those activities directors. They could have given me good go through this code and you're going to earn additional points. I think they had some basic affiliate codes, but it's really basic. Because of the depth and breadth of their site, they don't have all those relationship packages yet. Pinterest is actually one of my favorite sites right now. Not because I am a woman that likes to put pictures of shoes on Pinterest. That I do have a lovely pair of Asics, I will point out. I walk in a treadmill every day for about 10 to 15 miles just because it's better than sitting all day. Yeah, so I go through shoes like butter. So for a while I was pinning the shoes that I bought, and then I stopped because I realized what I was doing. There is nothing off limit. Like, the only reason I'm even covering some of these curation thoughts is because there's no industry that can't, put themselves in Pinterest. Again, I picked human resources. I should have picked like coupons or hosting or something like that.
We have a huge Pinterest page.
Yeah, so like, and you recognize like you could go so far as like the tech tunnel of servers, and like some of my employees are like server admins. They love everything new. They love seeing, oh my God, you could upgrade this to 16 gigabyte flats. Okay, great. Pictures of that is fine, but then it goes even further, like hosting fails. Fails is huge.
Gadgets and cool stuff, because it speaks to our audience. So we have all of these like nifty gadgets and Star Wars stuff, because we're a bunch of geeks. And that's what our audience like, is geeky stuff too, so we have a whole gadgets and cool stuff page.
And are you using it for the link equity at all?
We're not using that page for link equity, but we are using the other pages, like pictures of, our servers and all the different things. That's like our one page to like draw them into us.
And then you're funneling?
Then we're funneling them through our other, Pinterest boards straight to our website.
And are you doing anything directly to the pages funneling people in? So the awesome part about sites like Pinterest, I'll just talk about parasitic hosting real quick before David realizes what I'm doing. So one of the cool things about big brands is when you're having a trouble ranking, rank off of their equity instead. So Pinterest flows really well. They have a decent SEO team. Well, they have a growth team. They have a decent team where if you hit a lot of links into, even garbage links, into the section that's linking out towards the channel that you're using for your inflow, and you're automatically linking into your pictures, and the pictures are what the draw is, you're going to get some of that benefit. They have not yet shut out the flow. They're going to eventually, because everyone has so far. Like, Twitter used to be open, and then it got closed because Matt talked to, I think, Ed, and it's like, hey, turn it off, and then it got turned off. But Pinterest is still open. You can even do a lot more aggressive stuff with the specific images that you're pinning. Like PI bot used to be really big. There's a lot of Pinfly. There's like a lot of little third-party services that are really cool for this. But even beyond this, you can set up like a quasi-automated solution with regards to going, oh my goodness, I need an adult.
Used to be a problem.
Grease the white hat sites with that stuff that you do. You could spend a lot of time creating really great content, and when you create it, you can put it up here. But then you could do a lot of the things that you probably shouldn't do directly to your site, to a big authority site in order to get some benefit. No topic is off page. I'm not a big Google Plus fan, so we just did that. The designer that helped me with these slides, because I have no artistic talent, was Callie, so she put in her own profile page. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Hopefully Google Plus goes away. There's still ways you can manipulate it, of course, but it's not nearly as entertaining. The people that seem to be on Google Plus the most, aside from internet marketers, because we all want to be like Google employees, is Google employees. So. But there is great content. They talked about Vine a little bit. I'm actually a big fan of Vine, and I was late to the game, but for whatever reason, I just kind of got into it. I found myself watching a lot of these Vines. Like, why am I watching this? It's 4 in the morning. I get up in 30 minutes. Like, this is bad. But I found that these followings can get huge so fast. And if you're good at what you do, you're able to build a very fast following. I mean, it uses a similar hashtagging technology as Twitter because it's owned by Twitter now, in terms of sourcing searches. I won't talk about how you can manipulate Vine, but you really can very, very easily. For fun, I did one. Come on. Oh, great. Yeah, so. Yeah, so, side note there, I dressed up as He-Man for Halloween, and I have 3 kids. They absolutely loved it. And so all the time, I still have the sword in my den at home, I have my servers, I'm playing around. Let's do some He-Man. And so we'd play for a while, and then I'm like, I think I had to sit home watching the kids, and they wanted to, I had my phone on, like, take pictures, and I just take pictures. Let's do a video. I'm like, let's do Back-Dad, but He-Dad. And so I just started it for fun. Eventually, if I don't have any organic lift, I'll just buy my way into the market and own it. The crux of where we're going with this is we all know what the content types actually are. We're probably aware of what great content is and is not. But the whole point there in bringing in the curation aspect is you have to know what you're going to do before you ever do it. I mean, are you creating something that you want to actually share out in the marketplace? Or are you creating something specifically for your site? It really matters who your market is. The best pieces are going to work everywhere, but not every single piece is going to be the best piece, and sometimes you do not know until you try. I know that I've been a part of a lot of campaigns where it was great work, it was fantastic, but it didn't go viral. And people are like, well, why didn't it go viral? It was awesome. Well, because it just didn't fit for whatever reason. Sometimes it's not going to work. So you have to know ahead of time where you're going to be trying to push it. If I'm going to do something funny like the He-Dad thing, and then after I go and I start buying my way to prominence, then I'll start seeding it on FARC. Because I'll let people say, like, oh my gosh, look at this idiot doing He-Dad, you know, what a tool. I could see that taken off pretty easily because then I'd go and I'd buy traffic to FARC. But then, you know, the best pieces, you know, they do work everywhere, but you have to have a plan before you do anything. I won't even bother playing the video. It's actually kind of stupid. It's just the panda scratching his ass on the ground. So I do have a big background in penalties, you know, how to get into them and then how to get out of them. I mentioned automobile earlier. So I got hit with Panda 1, and I believe that was the February 2011 time frame. And of course, it sucked, right? You got hit. Well, the way I got out of it was, you know, we had a lot of sites, so we're always pulling in a lot of metrics. We had a lot of data. Like, well, what sites got hit more than others? Okay, that's interesting. It looked like this site at the time. There's probably a couple 100,000 pages indexed, but not too many of those pages had supporting link equity. It was all from the internal flow. So one of the theories I came to was, okay, what if we went ahead and ensured that we had no orphan pages within our domain? How do we do that? You gotta get links. Okay, you're gonna have to get a couple links for a couple 100,000 pages. How should we do this? I was a little more black hat for this, so I went and I started pointing at least 1,000 links to each page. So in a 9-month period, on the next calculation of Panda, it did come out. I joke about it openly because what got me out of Panda got me directly into Penguin. So I do not recommend that particular strategy. The reason it did work, though, was looking back, it was easier to see that even the early iterations of Panda, I do think that it had some aspect, at least some portion of the algorithm, devoted to determining whether or not a page was orphaned on the web and isolated. But a larger piece that came into play was the on-page text. I know people don't talk about keyword stuffing, but it's a lot bigger than they realize. By de-optimizing a lot of text, you can get a lot of pages back. But for this particular case, because I was hitting with so many links, I was changing the search queries related to my site. And I had a lot more branded queries. And they weren't necessarily the nicest queries. They're more along the lines of, what the heck is automobile.com doing? Or like, why is this guy hitting my forum multiple times? And so that type of stuff, Google was not very good at separating out negative and positive. So they associated it with a higher engagement. They associated it with a higher brand, brand signal. It popped out. And of course, because I was so aggressive and I was so on theme with my links, they pushed it out. Later iterations of Panda have been easier. I use a lot of free tools in my arsenal to figure out I'll give a shout out to SEO Book. He has a very simple keyword density tool. It's free. I mean, you can go on there, you can take a look at the domain, you can plug it in like, well, if my site is about hosting, I don't have to mention it 25 times in order to convey that it's about hosting. I just need to mention it once or twice. I need to ensure that I'm mentioning other phrases that are related to the subject of hosting, like racks, or maybe I'm talking about router, those phrases that you would expect to see. I'm not going to talk about like latent semantic indexing or anything, but there are certain phrases that you would expect to see within that copy. Later iterations of Canada, if you're able to handle the on-page with that regards, and you're able to get a better engagement, which usually means now adding more interactive stuff. Maybe you're trying to get rid of the phrases that you rank for that you're going to bounce high on. There's some traffic you don't necessarily want, then you can get out of Panda. I've been having a lot of success with that particular beast. All right, so we come to the point now. We have great content. Maybe we did some cool thing. You were very nice and you gave me some business. Now what? You need visibility. There's a lot of ways to get traffic. So let's just jump right in. Derek's going to talk a little bit about the organic outreach that he does. So I'm not going to go into too deep on it. All I'll talk about is buying links can still work. We don't actually buy links. We have to go through and create relationships with sites, and then keep feeding them great content. And eventually, some of the great content we give them will have a link into the client. So that's how we go about the organic and relationship building. It takes a long time, and it can screw up real fast. Hope you show that one too. But the long-term relationships are the way to go if you're going to go into the straight-up link building. Like doing a whole bunch of bookmarks and article blasts and directories, it can work to a degree, and it can work fine if you're doing it on a site you don't really care about. But if you're doing it on a big brand, you're asking to be fired. PPC, other toll road approaches. I'll just kind of stick with PPC. PPC practitioners use it a lot for the stated notice and desire of let's get paid traffic and convert the paid traffic. But what you could also do, I don't see enough people doing it, when you create a really cool piece of content, drop it into your PPC campaign as one of the landing pages, you're going to find that if it's really good and you view it as a shareable value, you're going to get secondary links that occur because it's so good. And because you're targeting specific users, that's awesome. Display. It's a lot like native in the sense like you can go out and there's display networks out there. Similar, if you're buying traffic to sites that you want to try to convert traffic on, that's one way to approach. Exact same thing with PPC though. You can go ahead and use your good content as a landing page as a means to increase a few links here and there. You can cycle through too. It's like a lot of display networks will let you use multiple landing pages. So you could use like an ad server and just load up like, here's our 50 blog posts we'd really like to get links to. Cycle through, test everything. Data is the king in this world, not content, not links, data. So going through and seeing what actually ended up working, you were able to scale your campaigns further. Social, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but it still does work. I mean, some people specialize in Facebook and Twitter. I actually really like LinkedIn, but for different reasons. And Stumbles, I find they're probably the one that sends the best traffic. As in terms of engaging traffic, it seems a little bit odd, I think, because of the nature of the randomization of what a stumble actually is. But you can get some pretty decent traffic to it, especially as I'm looking at this with my SEO hat on. I'm looking at this in terms of I want to be able to source my best content in the eyes of the people that might actually link about it. That is the purpose of this particular piece of content. I'm gonna do some paid stumbles for this tech group. Oh wow, look at this. This is awesome. This is a great hosting setup. That's how I'd approach that one. PR cannot be underestimated. By matching great content with incredible PR, you can do amazing things. When we did the Airbnb campaign, we did team up with their PR team. So by having the great content, by having native traffic blasting in, and having a PR outreach like, well, have you seen this? This thing's getting crazy traffic. People wrote about it. It's just so awesome. Yeah. Offline, more or less easy to understand. You know, dead trees still have merit. Billboards still have merit. Now, granted, you're not going to be pushing a lot of traffic to a cool new piece of content that you created, but it's an underlooked way to get traffic, especially if you're in like a local area. Like, you know, billboards are very, very local. Most radio tends to be local until you go satellite. It can be used to dial in a campaign. I know you guys are talking about like plastic surgeons and like local surgeons and plastic surgeons. I've seen where you can manipulate local results just because it's going to get a lot more queries for it. Like, have you seen the new billboard? Like, especially if it's like offensive, it seems to be like the more, I don't want to say lewd, but the more edgy you go, the more, you know, talked about things get. List building is incredible. Like, if you're in any competitive industry, you better be getting like an email list, like the biggest thing you can possibly do. So a lot of times I'll see people that are using like teeth whitening. Teeth whitening is a great example. Early teeth whitening guys, they figured out the display networks before the rest of us did, and they were pushing it. They were pushing it hard. They're doing rebills and some crazy stuff, and they're making a ton of money. But they got displaced. They got displaced by the guys that were in there, and they tried to get the email address before they tried to sell any product at all. By doing that, those guys were ending up, you know, remailing to the base that they were building as they're continually going across. Then they were able to price out the advertising payments to the display networks, got rid of the early guys that were doing the rebuilds. So the lesson there is, like, this is like the only, I don't want to say the only, but this is like one of the best Google proofing things that you could possibly do. If you could use whatever traffic mechanism that you have to build a great base, then you're less and less dependent. Like, people look at Groupon. Groupon's nothing but an emailer these days. I mean, they're just a giant list. The video is not working on this so well, and Dave already talked about native, but it was my favorite campaign. It was the College Humor Vitamin Water one. So it's the Subway prank. Has anyone seen this prank? So, darn it. I'm going to try. If it's hard to hear.
Hey, but hold on. There's an audio jack on the floor.
Yeah, I tried it, and it had the results that I expected. See? So anyways, what's going on is this guy is going to get on the subway, and they're like, great, another panhandler, you know, whatever, this stuff happens all the time, just ignore him. So I saw a couple different versions of this, and one of the versions they had, the vitamin water is a lot more prominent. And this particular one, I only saw at the very end that it talked about brought to you by vitamin water. The goal was, yeah, right there, the splash. I don't know how particularly effective this particular campaign was for them, but initially, almost everyone assumed that like this was ruh-roh. They assumed that it was a real prank, and they were all actors. Like you can get it out of your mind. Like everyone there, it was staged. It wasn't even New York. It was like some place like south of DC. It's like they rented the whole thing for a while and shot the video. But the whole point was they took content that was really funny. Like I heard laughing, so it wasn't all fake, and they tried to use it as a product promotion. Like we see product promotion in TV now, we don't really think anything of it. But like even 15, 20 years ago, that was really new. And people got really upset. I think it was Seinfeld that started having products in television shows. You're like, oh my gosh, he had a Pepsi. Can you believe this? Like, dude, how blatant is that? Now it's everywhere, so we don't really think about it. But that was the initial of native advertising within the television. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger on the web. I was going somewhere really thick too. Oh, one really cool way that you could see how this native advertorial type thing is going to be big is before they even started filming Spider-Man 2, they'd already made $150 million worth of product promotion. So that's so awesome.